Hello and welcome to the Transition Skills for Adolescents and Adults course. The content of these slides was compiled by myself, Dr. Leslie Neely, and Dr. Margot Dickey. This work was supported in whole or part by a grant from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, the THECB. The opinions and conclusions expressed in this document are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the opinions or policy of the THECB. So we are going to talk about teaching transition skills using ABA. ABA, also known as Applied Behavior Analysis, is a science of systematically applying interventions based on the principles of behavior to improve socially significant behaviors. As behavior analysts, we focus on modifying the environment to help individuals be successful in daily life. We also rely on evidence-based interventions and take data on the progression of those behaviors so that we know if the interventions are working. A very important element of ABA includes the ABCs of ABA. The ABCs refer to terms we use to describe one behavioral interaction. The antecedent, or what happens before the behavior begins, is the A. The behavior, or what the learner does, is the B, and the consequence, or what follows the behavior, is the C. We behavior analysts find that what happens right before and right after a behavior can change whether the behavior happens at all, or whether the behavior will happen in the future. The ABCs also guide us when we look to intervene for a certain behavior. In particular, the consequence can either encourage the behavior to happen in the future or reinforce the behavior, or it can discourage the behavior from happening in the future, or what we call punishing the behavior. Please note that we don't talk about reinforcing or punishing an individual, but a behavior itself. Consequences also don't always mean something bad. For example, imagine a child sees his mom for the first time in a week, or what we would term the antecedent. He might hug his mama and tell her that he missed her, the behavior, and she might return the hug and give him a kiss, the consequence. If he hugs his mom more in the future, we would say that this child's hugging behavior has been reinforced by the mom's hugs or the consequence that followed the behavior. So one of the best things about using ABA to teach transition skills is it allows us to focus all of our attention and efforts on the behaviors we want to see and minimize our attention and efforts to the interfering behaviors. This is called a reinforcement-based approach. We want to reinforce or encourage appropriate behaviors and ignore or minimize attention to the rest. So to get started in ABA, we must first identify the behavior. All of you have indicated you're interested in working on transition skills for your adolescent or adult. Before we begin talking about transition skill interventions, we will need to identify and define the transition behaviors you want to work on. These transition behaviors should relate to anything that involves moving into an independent living, employment, or post-secondary context. For example, these behaviors can include independent living skills such as bathing or cooking, self-management skills such as time management with schoolwork, and employment skills such as completing an inventory checklist. The three main transition skills include adaptive or functional skills, self-management skills, and employment skills. Adaptive skills, also called daily living skills, can include self-care or independent living skills like bathing, dressing, cleaning, and cooking. Social skills such as having conversations with others or fostering relationships. and verbal or nonverbal communication. Self-management skills include your child identifying his or her own target behavior, recording these instances of the behavior, and reinforcing instances of appropriate behavior using self-reinforcement or a request for reinforcement. Employment skills typically include executive functioning skills such as problem solving and organizing, social skills such as interacting with customers or coworkers, task completion, and transitioning from one task or environment to another. So go ahead and pause the video here and take a minute to write down at least 3 transition skills per category. So 3 for adaptive, 3 for self-management, and 3 for employment that you would like to work on with your adolescent or adult. When you meet with your BCBAD, they can help you prioritize these goals and choose the most crucial goals to begin working on for each skill category. So now that you have written down your 3 target skills per category, we're going to talk a little bit about the intervention and planning procedure we will use, called person-centered planning. Person-centered planning is crucial in planning an intervention with your child and can give you a guide to ask your child about his or her views on the transition skills they would like to work on. PCP is a continual process that promotes individualized planning for adolescents or adults with a disability. The purpose of PCP is to help you and your child make decisions about his or her future. It promotes community involvement, individualizes planning based on personal desires, interests, and dreams, and creates a collaborative support team that works to assist your child in reaching his or her own goals. So how do you implement person-centered planning? First, the team or participants has to be created. The participants can include family, friends, teachers, or others that are invited by your child. Person-centered planning takes place in any location that your child chooses or feels comfortable in. For example, your living room at your home. Person-centered planning can be done at any time, but it is helpful to start before transition services are implemented in the school, which is typically around the ages of 14 to 16 years old. The materials needed for PCP include a large piece of paper that can be drawn on, and graphic symbols or visuals if needed to increase the understanding of the planning process. PCP includes 3 major objectives. First, it allows everyone involved to share experience about your child in order to develop a descriptive history that will inform creating of future goals. The second objective is to discuss your child's current and future quality of life. And the third is to go over all of your child's dreams, goals, and preferences related to his or her own future. So we will use PCP planning during this process. When completing the person-centered planning assignments, make sure your child is able to advocate for themselves and fully participate in the meeting. Your child should be allowed to speak freely, and they have a huge role in the overall decision-making process. Make sure your child is also practicing self-determination. This means that your child is in charge of his or her own life and the direction that they are headed. All opinions need to be considered, and the best plan of action should be reached with your child's preferences and interest in mind. So what should you expect during your meetings? During your meetings with your BCBA will want to identify one behavior per transition skill category and define it so that it is observable or able to be seen, and measurable or able to be counted. So here are 2 examples of defining behavior in observable and measurable terms. So instead of saying paying attention, you might define that behavior as sitting with eyes oriented towards the conversation partner. Instead of saying having a meltdown, you might define that as crying and saying 1 or more curse words. This would enable an observer to measure these behaviors. So now you can prepare. So how should you prepare for your meeting with your BCBA? You can start by filling out the 4 person-centered plans to gain insight from your child and what goals they might want to work on regarding the different categories of transition skills. So start by writing 3 behaviors per transition skill that you would like to work on with your child. After identifying the behavior, go ahead and observe your child in the natural situation where the target skill should occur, such as interacting with peers, completing daily tasks, etc. Make sure to record your child's response, i.e., what did they say, what did they do, and what response was needed. You can also take a video if you prefer. These notes will help you and your BCBAD create an intervention that targets your child's current transition skills and promotes progression of those skills. We will now discuss some basic information you will need to know for the first meeting. These next slides are for informational purposes only, but please feel free to jot down notes or questions to ask your BCBAD. After identifying the most crucial transition skill that you would like to work on with your child, we will develop an intervention to both teach the new skill and reinforce the skill. So there are 2 main data-based interventions that are commonly used in teaching transition skills: visual task analysis and video modeling. In each of the above interventions, we will incorporate both a prompting strategy and a reinforcement strategy. You will discuss these interventions with your BCBAD in order to plan and implement the best intervention for your child. So before implementing an intervention, we will also need to write out an intervention plan in order to follow the same procedure each time we implement the intervention for a particular skill. So what is an intervention plan? An intervention plan includes all necessary components needed to teach a desired skill and/or decrease an undesired skill. An intervention plan consists of a definition of the behavior being measured, whether inappropriate or appropriate, the criterion for mastering the skill independently or with as much independence as possible, a list of your adolescent or adult's preferred items or activities, or the reinforcers, and procedures for teaching the skill, recording behaviors, and providing reinforcement. Your BCBAD will provide you with the intervention plans created specifically for your child. So your intervention plan may include a task analysis. Visual or written task analyses are typically used for teaching self-care and independent skills, such as taking a shower or brushing teeth. The task analysis includes step-by-step visual and written prompts in order to remind and walk your child through the task at hand. These visual steps can be put anywhere, for example, the wall of a shower or right above the sink, and are great when you or another caregiver are not there to help your child complete the skill every time. Task analyses also promote semi to full independence when completing a task or performing a skill with easy to fade cues and hints and constant visual reminders. So here's an example of a visual task analysis for a morning routine. A morning routine is a more broad task analysis and does not include each intricate step in the specific task of the routine. For example, the steps of getting dressed or brushing teeth. For this task analysis, the steps included are wake up, next use the restroom, next take off pajamas, next put on clothes, then eat breakfast, then brush your teeth, comb your hair, and last, get on the bus for school. This type of task analysis is typically for an individual who is proficient in completing tasks like brushing teeth and getting dressed. For an individual that has a hard time completing one or more of these tasks in the routine, a more intricate task analysis would be needed. This could include a step-by-step for each of the tasks in the morning routine. The second commonly implemented intervention is video modeling. Video modeling is an intervention involving an individual watching a video of someone else completing a skill and then imitating what is modeled in the video. There are many transition skills that can be taught using video modeling. There are 3 types of video models. These include point of view video modeling, which is filmed from the point of view of the individual and typically just shows the hands or body of the person modeling the skill. Self-modeling, where your child is the one being recorded completing the skill with prompts. The prompts or cues are then edited out, which makes it seem as though your child is completing the task independently. And then peer and adult modeling, which includes a peer or adult aged individual modeling the skill. Peer and adult modeling and point of view modeling are the most commonly used and the most practical to film and edit. So creating a video model does not have to be difficult or time-consuming. You will need a camera, for example, a smartphone, computer webcam, digital video camera, etc., and simple editing software like iMovie or Max or Windows Media Maker on PC. There are also free editing apps that you can discuss with your BCBA. Before you begin filming the video, you will need to observe your child's current behavior that you have decided to target. Make a list of the steps necessary to independently perform the target behavior. Make sure your child has the necessary prerequisite skills and can attend to a video for the amount of time needed. In addition, you will need to recruit others to model the skill or film your child or yourself performing the behavior. When you begin filming the video, make sure to film each step and edit the video using free software or those listed above for Macs and PCs. The videos should typically be less than 5 minutes, but should match the amount of time your child can typically attend to a video. So here's a video example of point of view modeling. Notice that the skill of hand washing is broken up with some verbal prompts or cues of what to do, and you can only see the hands and body of the model to emulate the child performing the behavior. Verbal prompts can easily be edited out as the child becomes more fluent with the washing hands.
Okay, turn on water. Get soap. Wash hands for like 20 seconds.
Rinse.
Yeah. Turn off water. Dry hands.
Get towels.
They're so silly. What are they doing on that table? They're so silly. Okay, ready?
Throw it away.
Your turn.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put like my.
This is an example of the process for creating a self-modeling video. This video shows an individual performing the behavior with the prompts needed because she is unable to perform this skill independently at this point. Verbal prompts are provided.
Turn on water. Pump soap. Wash hands for 20 seconds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Turn off water. Dry hands. Throw it away.
Here's the same video of the individual, but the audio has been muted to show how easy it is to edit out the prompts. This looks like the individual herself will perform the behavior without the prompts, and this can help promote independence. So here's an example of a video model of a peer performing the behavior. Visual prompts were put in, but as the individual becomes more fluent in performing this skill, these prompts can be deleted from the video. With any of these video modeling strategies, your child will watch the video before performing the skill. So how do you teach using video modeling? After you have recorded and edited the video, it's time to teach the target behavior using the video model. First, create an opportunity for performance of this skill by arranging the environment and following your child's lead. Immediately before you engage in the pre-planned opportunity, make sure to show your child the video. Once your child has performed the skill, with or without prompts, remember to reinforce the target behavior immediately. Begin to record the instances when your child performs the skill independently, which means no prompts except for the video model. When you see that your child is consistent in responding with the target behavior with little to no prompts, you can start to fade out the use of the video modeling. So remember that your BCBA will want to take data to make sure the intervention is working. Data can also be helpful in identifying when to make changes to an intervention. It has also been shown that if decisions are made based on impressions of progress and not hard data, we tend to overestimate the ability of the child. We have also seen that taking data typically helps more children make better gains. Your BCBAD will provide you with the data sheet templates and walk you through the data collection strategies. So now we've briefly discussed the two main interventions. We will discuss some tips for encouraging and reinforcing behaviors. So going back to the ABCs of ABA, the antecedent, what happens before the behavior itself, and the consequence, or what happens after the behavior. You can see that a prompt is inserted in between the antecedent and the behavior. So if the antecedent, for example, in the hand washing, is the sight of the sink, and your child still does not engage in the behavior, you might add a prompt or a cue. A prompt is a hint or cue added to the environment to make it more likely that the learner will respond correctly. There are many ways that you can incorporate prompts. You may use only one of these prompting methods or multiple prompting methods in order to teach your child the target transition skill. The goal is to eventually fade all of these prompts so that your child performs it independently. Some examples of the prompts you could use is a time delay, which involves waiting patiently for a response. You may use some sort of prompt like a gesture, a model, a vocal, or a physical prompt. Or you may just look expectantly at your child. Your BCBAD will help you to decide which prompt to use for your child. One thing to note is that when determining which prompts to use, we want to identify the skill we are teaching, and then identify the natural cue that should occasion the behavior. So for example, in the hand washing situation, the presence of the sink and dirty hands should be the cue that your child needs to wash their hands. Then we will think about what your child does not know how to do. Remember that the prompt should always be faded back to that naturally occurring cue. So 2 prompt procedures I want to go over quickly, just so that you'll be a little bit familiar when your BCBAD talks about it. The first is least to most prompting. This is typically where we go from the least amount of help to the most amount of help. Least to most prompting is typically used for a skill that your child already knows how to do, but needs a little bit of a reminder. The next one is most to least prompting. This is typically the prompting procedure we will use when your child is learning a new skill. So we'll start on the left with the most amount of help, all the way down to the right to the least amount of help, or the natural cue. So now we want to talk about the consequence, or the third term, what happens after the behavior. A reinforcement is any consequence that follows a behavior that makes the behavior more likely to occur in the future. You will be incorporating reinforcement in all of the interventions that you choose. Reinforcement is any consequence, good or bad, that follows a behavior and makes that behavior more likely to occur in the future. When implementing reinforcement procedures, there are some keys to remember. First, reinforcement should be reinforcing. And this is individualized to your adult or adolescent. So we want to add something after the behavior has occurred that will encourage that behavior in the future. Reinforcement should be immediate. Typically, we have about a half a second to a second rule after the behavior when the reinforcement should be delivered. We want to also vary and mix our reinforcers. And this is to prevent your adolescent or adult from satiating on a specific item, which then in turn will lose its reinforcing properties. When we think about, we also should be able to identify what is being reinforced. So instead of saying something general like good job, you might give them specific praise such as good job sitting quietly. When we think about reinforcement for transition skills, we want to think about embedding reinforcement into the environment and using reinforcement that is appropriate for the skill. For example, if your adolescent and adult is playing with a friend or sibling, we might give the friend or sibling an important part of the game and have them deliver it after your adolescent or adults ask for it appropriately. We want the reinforcement to be reinforcing, but also to be as natural as possible. So what can we do to promote continued independence when performing the skill that you and your child have been working on? Maintaining skills is important in order to promote independence. The following strategies can be implemented to promote continued independence. We want to continue to practice the skill. Create opportunities for you and your child to exhibit the skill in the natural environment. We also want to continue to take data to make sure that your child continues to perform the skill correctly. And it's okay to need a little bit of a tune-up every once in a while. We want to allow your child to practice the skill in multiple environments with multiple people and with the least amount of help possible. So we don't want to prompt if your child doesn't need prompting. And And if possible, we want to let your child use reminders such as visuals or written prompts or reminders to help them independently exhibit the behavior. So now you are ready to meet with your BCBAD. We want to get started by starting those 4 person-centered plans to gain insight from your child about what goals they might want to work on. Also, go ahead and write down up to 3 behaviors per transition skill category that you would like to work on. We look forward to our first meeting with you, and we look forward to working with you. We just wanted to provide this slide as there is a link to the government agency that can provide services for employment for your child. As a note, the previous government agency that handled vocational services, it was called the Department of Assisted and Rehabilitative Services, DARS, has been dissolved, and now services have been transferred to the Texas Workforce Commission, TWC, and the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, HHSC. You can find a list of new services at the DARS website. Just click on the link at the bottom of the slide. Also, the 3 websites below give additional information on transition skills and life choices that you and your child need to discuss. Finally, this slide provides you with our references that we used in creating our materials.